Hi, hello. Today is December 1. This is the release week for 126. So we are light on agenda and we'll just be covering some of the conformance related stuff today. Rian, why don't you go ahead and let's talk about, the items that you have on the agenda.
Thank you very much. If you care, you can share. Otherwise, can make the co-host and I can share either way.
I will share.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is a new laptop. I think I'll make you a co-host. No worries.
So Andrew silently dropped off. Make host. Hey, David.
Yeah. And I will share this browser here and share. You should be able to see my screen now. Just take that off to the side. All right. Thank you very much for attending and listening to the conformance things on SIG Arch. First point I want to bring up is the ineligible endpoint that we added to the ineligible endpoints YAML file. So there's two discussions out of this. The first one is this PR is ready to merge. So if we're going to have an LGTM and approve and a hold, I will unhold it the moment the release is cut, and then we can update API snip. So because I don't want to mess with the release things, if that would be helpful.
Hang on.
So the first point on the agenda. So basically, there's a new endpoint that came in. You should see it now on my screen, which is the Get Resource API group endpoint. It's in alpha, but because it does not have alpha in its URL, it actually shows up in API Snoop as a GA endpoint. So I had a whole discussion down here, and Jordan agreed. This makes sense to put that into GA, and it becomes eligible in 131.
I remember this now. So one question for you: where do we use this information in the ineligible endpoints YAML?
What do you mean? Where do we use it? So basically,
we are creating and maintaining this file, but where do we actually use the information in the file?
That's another agenda point that I've got. So I'm going to explain, because Jordan did ask, say, hey, there's things that need to come back on the list in here. So I did do a bit of explanation here, and it's part of our 123 plan. So when I get to that point in the agenda, I'll quickly run through that explanation.
So this doesn't have LGTM approved. So let's request Jordan for a LGTM, and then I can do the approval on this, okay?
Fantastic. And you can even hold if you want, then I'll unhold it as soon as the release has been cut next week, if it's needed.
Yeah, we are not going to backport it into 126, right?
I think we actually need it in 126, because if we go to API Snoop now, I'm not sure how it will show up, because if we go to API Snoop,
right, and if it
doesn't matter,
is the only one that is using this YAML file, then I'm not inclined to try to land it for 126.
No, it's not. It's really not urgent. And now that I think about it, API Snoop will process it and take it totally off the list, so that you've only got the one little endpoint there at the top. And the moment that gets merged in, it gets removed out of the data, and that endpoint will disappear off the radar.
Yeah. Okay. And so when the 127 opens up, you will have one more bar in the graph that says 127.0, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And it'll show, it will not have any gray. So which
it will have 10 gray endpoints, because that's what's left. When I go through the 2023 explanations, I'll do a rundown of what we're planning for next year.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Tim. So as soon as the release has been cut and that's been approved, I'll merge it in. The next point, I think I'll skip over the next one. It's a conformance question, and we can get back to that in a moment because there's many questions about 123. So basically from the information, Jordan actually started the conversation about a thing that I was planning to present this week, where we're going. So by the end of 126, we're actually going to have 10 endpoints remaining. So if we go to API Snoop and we go here, we'll see, we go untested, it's only these 10 endpoints remaining. So those are the ones that we've got to try and get in within the next, in 127, we're going to try and kill off all these endpoints off the list, which would then take us to 100%. And then Jordan made the very, very valid statement and said, but there's some, if we go to his comment here, he said, but this went GA in 125, and this is not optional since 121. So what happened in the initial stages of creating ineligible endpoints, there was just a list which was part of the code of API Snoop, which discounted those points for. And then in the beginning of, if I remember correctly, I think 2021, yeah, early 2021, we basically move the ineligible endpoints into the YAML file and consume it from there. So it becomes public and people can actually ask the questions, why this and why that. And we need to bring them in because it felt to me that we agree about something in a meeting and we put it in there and nobody knows about it again. It's kind of hidden. Now it's out in the open.
Yep.
And great for Jordan to comment on that. Appreciate it. So what we're going to do in 123, we're going to create a list of all the ineligible endpoints where we can discuss it. We'll bring it to this meeting and then we can discuss and people will say, but exactly what Jordan did. He just did a scan and found 4, and I'm sure. And those are some
probably more. Yeah.
Those are some of the very first one that was on the list that did not come in with a PR. That's from like 2 years ago. So great discussion. What we want to do is kill the last 10. Have a point where we can just celebrate and say, okay, we reach 100% now. Let's see what should come back. And then we're going to work through that list and one by one create the E2E test for those endpoints. Then we're going to promote them to conformance. And then we remove the endpoints from the list. So we're going to stay on 100% coverage as to have a clear where we are. We've killed all technical debt and then just kill all the things open. And I'll find a way, I already discussed with Zach, to visualize that in API Snoop to say these things will be coming back next to that. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do it yet, but we will publicly announce these things will come back and discuss with the SIGs. Then once we've gone through that, hopefully that wouldn't take all year, and there's not too many, but whatever comes back, we'll deal with that. And once that's done, we're going to review all conformance tests. Because at the moment there's a lot of tests, and SIG apps specifically picked up on this when we finished up last of their endpoints, where a resource is created, 1 or 2 endpoints is tested, and the resource is deleted. And then the same resource is recreated, and then some other endpoints are tested and it's deleted. So there's a lot of setting up that's unnecessary, that if we can take all that 4 or 5 tests in a specific resource file, generate a single test for that does all the endpoints, and we promote that to conformance, remove the old ones, and basically reduce the compute and the overhead for tests. So that's one of the strategies that we have in mind for next year. And then also what we want to do is there is the, testing conventions for testing. Stephen and I did a bit of a spiel here about what we want to change. So make sure that things are on the latest version of Go, the best type of testing that we can, that as we developed over the years, because some of that test is like 5 years old.
Yeah.
So get more consistency across different SIGs, and specifically so like SIG apps, and across all SIG app resources have similar testing for all resources to make it more consistent and reduce the cost.
Okay. Can I ask you to add at least trying to figure out like which tests take how much time, and like, you know, see if make it easier for people who are running conformance tests to, you know, to not waste as much time. You see what I'm saying?
So is it the optimization and see in which ways we can reduce
the
test time? Okay.
Right. Reduce the test time. Yeah.
Dims, there's, I think from memory, there's a plan to change some of the settings for timeouts so that they're manually configurable. So if people want to look at overriding it, there's a whole, I think there's one or two discussion points in some other PRs that I've run across in the past, and that's potentially part of the process.
Right.
To remove those hard-coded constants and then bring in, I think it's to do with framework, to do with timeouts. So it's gonna help address that.
Yeah. And like one feedback that I've gotten from folks was like, hey, we just run the conformance test until it is all green. Right. So, and we'll need to collect flakes also from folks, I think.
I had a question about this. Do we have much visibility as reviewers into like the change in like testing time that a PR incurs? Like if I'm reviewing something and somebody's adding a bunch of tests, do we get much visibility into like how much additional
test grid it is there. In test grid, you can look at the number of seconds that each test takes. Awesome. That's the granularity that is there.
Yeah, I just need to learn how to use that. Thank you.
Yeah.
What we often try, Stephen, if you can grab a link, I'll appreciate it and just throw it in the chat. What we do normally when we bring a conformance test for verification, while it's on E2E and on the test grid, there's action option in test grid where you can choose to show the seconds that it run, and we also bring the graph and you can see the seconds and whether it's flaking or not. So
and that information is surfaced to the approvers when a test is being marked for conformance. But but the thing is, like, after it is approved, like, we never go back and check if it is deteriorating over time or not. All right, so that is basically what I'm asking us to take a peek at.
So great, we will have a look at that. And we will continually be back at this meeting with this is where we are, this is what we're thinking. And I think throughout the community that would be very valuable work too, as cost is important, to reduce cost, reduce unnecessary runs, and also make it more, as you say, more convenient for the end users of conformance testing to know how much time should happen where.
Right.
Then the other important thing that we're going to need to figure out the process, I'm not sure exactly how yet, but I'm going to figure out something where we monitor the ineligible endpoint list on a periodic basis properly at the start of every release, looking at KEPs that's going to come into a specific release. So Stephen and I will work out a process where we make sure we don't have 6 releases down the line. Oh, that we've got about this endpoint that need to come back, or that it came back but nobody did the conformance test, to make sure that we have better monitoring for that.
Okay.
Then what's also going to happen continually, which is at the moment already happening, what we're going to continue in 123 is ensuring, so we have a periodic job that runs a GitHub action to see that there's no new technical there. So API Snoop is updated over every weekend, and Monday morning New Zealand time, which is still Sunday in the US, we actually monitor and see what came in new. So we always see the things, if something sneaks in, especially around code freeze, we're really diligent in checking it and do some extra manual runs to make sure we don't get more technical debt. And then on automation, we've obviously increasing automation. So API Snoop previously, at the end of every release, we had to go and do some tweaks and updates to make sure that the next, as you said earlier on them, that the new release bar get added. So there's now automatic run. The moment we see the release come through, the GitHub action kicks off and it actually updates API Snoop, add the new release, and also run a Snoop update, so the graph updates to the new information. And then also
I saw that PR float by. Thank you.
Yes, and then also other great thing that Stephen did for us. There was an open issue since 2018 where, if we go to where's it says, I think conformance, yes, it's under CNCF base conformance. Under there, we have docs. And under docs, we have all the release documentation, where you can get the detail of all the changes for the summary for the release. And there was an issue open since 2018 that there was missing. I think there was basically everything from 2018 was missing. So Stephen added that in for us recently. And then also now he automated the moment the release get cut, we tested it, should work just fine next week. It's actually automatically going to create a PR bringing in the 126 documentation. So well done for Stephen there. And then also another update that we did, which I didn't put in here, is Caleb created an automation for the CNCF CI bot, which is running on the repo. If we go to the pull request for those that have not met the CNCF CI bot, if you go into any PR, the labeling happens by the CNCF CI bot. And that also now has an automated update, because you'll find probably within a day after the release has cut, somebody's submitting conformance results. And if we're not quick on it, they actually flake because the release is not available to be checked by the bot. So that's also automated with the PR now.
Can you go back one sec? What is the list
Yes.
of requirements? And it says 15.
Okay, let's find one. So this has grown over a period of time to make sure that it does all the things that we need. So if you submit the PR and it doesn't pass, it actually tells you there's some things missing, and it tells you here, you can look at the requirements. The requirements, there's actually a little, it tells you what your product YAML. So this is the documentation for how to documentation for submission. And then under that, we created this table, and the table tells you, okay, your PR title may not be empty. Your submission contains all the required fields. It checks that you've got the right amount of files. It checks that it's actually in. So if you submit for 124, that the files actually go into the 124 directory. So there's this whole list. And then add on that we recently did is in this check. Now it also checks for email address to address the situation where we might want to communicate with all the submitters of conformance requests. Taylor also welcomed that. She said she tried to maintain a mailing list, which is just too difficult because it's every other release that the person submitting the conformance is changing. So to simplify. So if there's any other requirements that people think of, we continually, this has been a growing thing over the last 2-3 years. We've from about 3 or 4 things that we check now, 15. And it's making the quality, and the passing of getting it merged in is a 5-second job now. It was really hard before we got the bot up to this point.
Right. There was one other longer term thing that I wanted to talk about. Once you finish this, go ahead, please.
Okay, thanks. Okay, then we have a PR that I can open quickly. So the endpoint that we mentioned up here, the Get Resource API group endpoint, we mentioned that it needs conformance tests when it come in, and Patrick was very proactive about it, and he added this issue saying they need to remember, and I added it to the dashboard for conformance as well for the project. But he makes a statement here that it depends on port forwarding, which is a debug feature and not part of conformance. And this perked our interest because if we go to API Snoop, there is actually this port forward endpoint that need to be tested. And if that statement is true, that's why we brought it here to make sure, is that an agree, if I can just find it, if that is an agreeable statement and port forwarding is not a conformance, we might be careful about trying to write a test for that. Yeah, and for this, we'll have to go back to the SIGs and ask them to rule on it, right? Whether they want to see it in, so it's not up to us. They have to tell us whether this is something that they need, they consider it as a feature that needs to be conformant. Okay, so what I'll do then, we can reach out to Patrick and just poke at him why he makes the statement and who would be the arbiter of whether it is a
Yeah.
Not that I doubt his knowledge at all.
Right.
Because we don't know, we bring it here and say, should
Yeah,
this
we
be
need
a
an
thing?
official statement from them saying, hey, this
Yes.
is SIG network, and we think that this API doesn't need to be part of the conformance, and then we'll put it in the eligible list, and then we'll close this issue saying, hey, the thing that we depend on testing this is not available, so we can't test this either.
Yeah, so I will take that to their meeting, and if they say, and also if they say port forwarding, because this is a double cutting, if it is port forwarding is optional or is just a debug feature, so we'll take port forward endpoint also to the ineligible list as well as their endpoint to the list. And that is, thank you for the patience and listening to my long story. Thumbs over to you.
Okay. So one other thing that I wanted to poke at for the longer term for this the group is right now we are dependent on Sonobuoy, right? And most of the people are using Sonobuoy to run the conformance test. Do you know of anybody who's not using Sonobuoy?
There is people not using Sonobuoy. Stephen, you'll probably be able to be better to that. We've seen that in the conformance submissions, but I'm not technically able to speak about it in detail.
So we have to find those people and see how they are using it. For example, we know that the Kubernetes release, we do mint a conformance image, which is then used by Sonobuoy to run the conformance test. So if we can document one other way to run conformance program, other than Sonobuoy, I think we'll be in a better position going forward because because Sonobuoy, I don't know if it is going to be funded by the folks who work on it, and the last maintainer that I used to work with is no longer there. So I don't know the future of Sonobuoy. So we should have at least one other way of running the we should document at least one other way of running the conformance tests other than what we have today.
Dims, I think they're looking for staff from our side to help out with the Sonobuoy project. That's all I heard.
Yeah.
All right, so Sonobuoy is running low on people. That's the main issue here.
That's right. And the main thing there is going to be like, hey, can we just run this specific conformance image that comes out with Kubernetes? And how would I get my logs that I need to use for filing the report, basically, right?
Okay, so we'll look into that, but also then the issue about Sonobuoy, because everybody's mostly dependent on that, is there on the CNCS radar that this is falling off? Because the conformance project is one of the...
It is not a CNCF project, right? It's a VMware project. So we are using it, and it's up to their best of their ability that they fund it. So this is the only place we can talk about it at this point.
Okay. Okay, so we'll look at the alternatives, but yes, it is concerning that if Sonobuoy falls out and there's no official alternative. Right.
So thanks for bringing that up, that they are also looking for maintainers. It would help if VMware puts out something in their README or an issue saying, hey, we are looking for maintainers. Anybody interested in becoming maintainers would be something that we can point to and ask people to go join that project. Would you be able to pass that along, Ash?
Yeah, I can talk around and help spread the word, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, that's all the agenda points as I did
So-
most of the talking. Anybody else that want to add something, some additional one?
David, Joe, anything else from you?
No, nothing else for me. I am interested in what ends up happening for the timing for EE tests. We've seen some issues with that downstream as well.
Right. Yeah.
But we don't have a good suggestion at the moment.
Yeah, I think if we can gather the statistics both in our test grid and as well as like the OpenShift one, David, I think we'll get a sense of like where to put in effort first, or the priority list of, hey, these are the top 5 time hoggers of the test case of the test suite, something like that.
Yeah, that's a decent starting point. I am interested in trying to find a way to do it over time so that when I'm reviewing a PR, like Joe was mentioning, I can actually look and say, hang on, this test suddenly started taking an extra 30 seconds. Why?
Right. Yeah. So I guess the one other thing right there, Rian, would be how do you show this piece of information about like timing for each test average, over a period of time in the API Snoop itself. Not so you can go to API Snoop and take a look at it, but that's not going to be enough because we'll need the trend over time, like David was mentioning. So we need to figure out like how to surface that information. If there is a PR change in some place, and then the conformance job starts, the test takes twice as much time, even though they touch some code. They didn't touch the test code, but they changed something in Kubernetes itself, which made the test take longer, right?
Yeah, that's
actually
like admission plugins, for instance,
right,
are right for doing that.
Yeah,
that would actually be a very nice project to have a statistical run every week for all tests and see kind of like we're monitoring in case infra the cost progress, have like a test progress, and you can see data per test over time and overall test run time.
right.
And that will also help when we refactor tests into single lifecycle tests to see how much, and then you can say, okay, this 5 tests was worth 3 minutes, and if we refactor it, we go down to 1 minute, to also show the value of the work that we're doing to save, because I think we're running quite a lot of cost on the testing now.
The closest analogy I can think of is the scaling team. Like you see all their graphs, right? And suddenly if they see something is, averaging at that level, and then suddenly it drops or goes up, then they are like, oh, what happened here? Something changed, in Kubernetes. So then you go to the date in which it was run. It was the older number, and then you go to the date where it was a higher number and compare the PRs that was merged in between to figure out, like, do a git bisect and figure out like what caused the change, right? That's typically how scalability team runs. So if we could do something similar, that will be useful for us.
Yeah, thanks for the pointers. That's really, really helpful. And we try to make it better for everybody all the time.
Sounds good.
Even an imperfect solution that is well documented would be a big improvement. If I knew a doc to go to like help figure those things out, it would save me a ton of time, because I often I'll be looking at a PR, I'll be like, these are a lot of tests. I have no idea if these are good tests or bad tests. If I had a doc I could pop open and start running commands, I would do it.
Absolutely. So I mean, we don't have to go all the way. Let's do documentation first, and then we figure out how to do it better over time. We don't have to go into automation right immediately, but let's see how we can look at the existing test grids, the hours and the OpenShift one, and start from there.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the extra things to do. We will definitely work on that.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks a lot. See you all next time.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. Have a
Bye.
good weekend. Cheers.